Good morning, brethren from Knicks Nation. I hope everyone's healthy this morning. I hope your loved ones are healthy in this COVID environment that we are in. And if you're so blessed, I hope you're gainfully employed. Today, the goal is to talk about Jerami Grant and the possibilities with Jerami Grant. But as I was thinking about Jerami Grant, let's set the stage again for the New York Knicks here. Things depend on how our management sees our team. Now, people have asked Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau about the team. You know, what can we expect going forward? And really and truly, when you think about it, we've gotten very vague answers about the team. The only thing that is so Leon Rose mentioned Frank. He mentioned Mitch and RJ, and then he mentioned Frank and Dennis Smith Jr. And he mentioned all of them in a positive way. Now, that does not necessarily mean anything. Like, for example, Tom Thibodeau, during these open practices, the Knicks have been having, he was asked about Julius Randle. And if you heard the interview, he said Julius Randle is a pro's pro. That's what he said. Now, that can mean two different things. Pro's pro can mean I'm respecting Julius Randle because he's professional and he can be a leader on this team. Or he's a pro. He understands the business. So if we trade him, he'll understand that. See? So things are vague and there's no clear cut thing that they're saying to us. Both Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose both mentioned Mitchell Robinson and RJ Barrett as cornerstone type players or players they want to build around. So I think the only thing for sure that we know is that these two guys are going to be there. Okay. The rest, everything else we know is what we're guessing or what we're surmising or what the media is throwing out there. We really don't know. And everything depends on how they're looking at the team in terms of what they're going to do next. Okay. So like myself, I'm looking at Tom Thibodeau. I'm looking at his history, right? I'm looking at what he has been used to doing. Like he was trained up in the Knicks organization, part of his coaching pedigree comes from Pat Riley and Jeff Van Gundy. Then he went over to Boston. He was under Doc Rivers as a defensive assistant, right? Then he had his own Chicago Bulls team, and we seen what that was about. And then, of course, the Minnesota Timberwolves situation. So we get an idea of his history and of his habits in his history, and you can get an idea of what he's looking for. So, for example, I'm thinking of Frank Ntilikina as a piece on this team because of his defensive ability and Thibodeau's history with defensive players. I could be wrong, but that's all we have to go on. Okay. We know Thibodeau likes defensive players. We know he likes high IQ players. Okay. He does. Because he runs defensive systems and offensive systems that require a high IQ. Right? So that's all we know. So when we are talking as New York Knicks fans, and I am talking with regard to the possible free agents we can get, we're very limited in the information that, as far as what the team is looking for. Now, we've heard, media reports, and this is the thing. Basically, there's two guys that when they say something, I say, okay, this is true. As far as the NBA is concerned. Three organizations. There's one called Shams. When Shams comes out with something, it's usually right. When Adrian Wojnarowski says something, it's happening. And as far as the Knicks, when Ian Begley says something, it's happening. And the reason, as far as Begley and Wojnarowski, they are not trying to hype you with false information like Mark Berman does. Or what Stephen A. Smith does. They're not trying to hype you with false information or sensationalizing stuff. They're coming out with factual information. They're actually reporters. Okay, and they're reporting factual information. Okay, so Ian Begley doesn't hype you about the Knicks. He's very straightforward, and he's telling you what he's heard from management about what the Knicks are doing. And so Ian Begley has said the Knicks are looking for a stretch 4. But he said that before they hired Tom Thibodeau. Now, is that stretch 4 Kevin Knox? It's not Julius Randle because he's not a stretch 4. Does Tom Thibodeau like Julius Randle? Because certainly Tom Thibodeau, he could work Julius Randle into his system. So we don't know. So that brings me to my next point. Then, as we all know, the Knicks are a rebuilding team, which means that they're starting from scratch, again, with a new coaching staff, a new management team. What they have is a group of young players that have been drafted over the last 4 seasons and underdeveloped. That's what they have. All the veterans they have are on short-term contracts, so they can be gone today. The only veteran they have that's on a longer-term contract is Julius Randle, and his contract after this year is a team option, which is good. So they're flexible in that regard. So let's talk about, as a developing team, what you're looking for. So we talked about Julius Randle not really being a number 1 option. That one of the mistakes that Steve Mills made with Scott Perry was signing Julius Randle to a contract as if he's a number 1 option and with the expectation that he's going to be a number 1 option. And that did not work out. So let's talk about what is a number 1 option. What is a number 1 option? A number 1 option in the NBA is the first player that you're going to look to score the ball. It is a player that can score on 3 levels. What do we mean when we say 3 levels? It's a player that can score from the 3-point line. He can score from the mid-range, and he can finish close to the rim. That's a player that can score on 3 levels. Okay? So those are your type, like Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's a 3-point shooter. He's a mid-range shooter. He can finish at the rim. He's a number 1 option. Kyrie Irving is a number 1 option, which is why the Nets have 2 number 1 options. And what you want around a number 1 option, what makes the Nets a championship contender right now, is because you have 2 guys that are number 1 options, and then you have complementary pieces around them. Now, let's go back for a second about the number 1 option. So they can score on 3 levels, which means they require a lot of attention from an opposing defense. And because of the attention they require, because if you're not paying attention to them, if you're not double teaming them, they're going to kill you. Okay? They're going to destroy you. They're going to pick you apart. Like LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson. They're going to kill you. They're going to beat you offensively. Now, defense is another story. These are where your elite players come in. They're not only number 1 options, but they're defensive stoppers, which means you could switch them on, 1 through 4 sometimes, and they're going to lock up whoever they're guarding. They're going to lock that person up. It's like they're like on Revis Island in the Jets and cornerback. Who's ever on that side of the field, forget about it. You don't even worry about throwing there. Well, this is like Revis Island in basketball, a defensive stopper. When that guy is on you, that guy's out the offense. Forget about it. Okay? So if you got a number 1 option like Kawhi Leonard or LeBron James or AD or Giannis Antetokounmpo, that's a number 1 option. and a defensive stopper. That's what you call a superstar. Okay, you got that superstar right there. Okay, so now you have number one option. The Knicks do not have a true number one option. Most developing teams don't have a true number one option. It does not mean you're not going to be a good basketball team. Again, I like to look at the Miami Heat. Miami Heat has been a good basketball team for a long time. And since LeBron and Bosh and Wade either declined or retired or left, they did not have a number one option. Yet they were always in the playoff conversation if they had a good team. Then they bring in Jimmy Butler, who is, obviously he's now a number one option. But he's not really the top level number one option because Jimmy Butler's not a good 3-point shooter. He's a mid-range slasher type guy. Defensive stopper, definitely. But he's considered a number one option. Well, that's the closest thing Miami has had to a number one option. Okay. And they were in the finals. And they're going to lose to the Lakers probably, but they're in the finals. So not all good. You don't need a number one option to be a good team. But those guys get you over the top. Durant, Irving, LeBron, Giannis. Those guys get you in the championship conversation. Okay. When you're a developing team, you're not going to have one of those unless you draft him or develop him. Nobody that's already an established number one option is going to come to your developing team because they want to win championships. As I said, guys on those levels, like a LeBron, like a Kawhi, like a Giannis and Antetokounmpo, they're going to get their money any place they go. If they created a team in, North Dakota, and Antetokounmpo was there, he's going to get paid. You understand? Because he's global. It's not about North Dakota. It's about global. Okay? Because the NBA is global. So they're going to get their money regardless. So when they're going someplace, they're looking at, okay, I'm a number one option. What complementary pieces does my prospective team have that's going to help me get the ring, the championship? That's what they want, the championship. Okay? That's what your number one option. So when you're a developing team like the Knicks, you're not going to get those guys because you don't have anything. You don't have the developmental pieces. And even if you did, you just have prospective pieces at this point. Nothing is established because your record shows nothing is established. Bill Parcells said your record, you are what your record says you are. And the Knicks just won 21 games. Now, when they win 41 games, now you're going to have number one options looking at them because now they're saying, I might be the difference between 41 and 52 games. And that's why Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant went to the Nets because they won like 42 games. They're in the playoffs. And now those guys figure, okay, we can get them over the top. So at this point, the Knicks are not getting any number one options. They're not getting any superstars. We don't have a number one option. We're trying to develop one in RJ Barrett. Okay, we're trying to develop one in RJ Barrett. So that leaves us with second tier players. What is a second tier player? A second tier player is either because of his abilities or his skill set is just below the superstar. He's not a superstar. He can maybe shoot, but he can maybe play some defense, but he's not the best at it. Okay, he's good, but he's not the best. Or maybe he specialized on the defensive end and he's okay, he's adequate on the offensive end. Or he specialized on the offensive end and he's okay, he's adequate on the defensive end. These are your second tier players. The Knicks are in the market for second tier players. Okay? And I've heard people say the Knicks don't have any talent. And I'm going to use the word stupid because that is stupid. Why is that stupid? Let's go over this one more time. The National Basketball Association has the best basketball players in the world. If you are fortunate enough to be on a roster in the National Basketball Association, you have talent. I don't care what team it is. If you're in the NBA, you can play. All right. So to say they don't have any talent is disrespectful and stupid. You're in the NBA. So the question is putting the talent together to mesh, because basketball is a 5-man game, so that they can mesh in a 5-man way at its maximum ability, right? So, for example, the Knicks had talent when they had Derrick Rose on the team with Carmelo Anthony and Kristaps Porzingis. You know, those three on the same team. We only won 31 games because they didn't mesh properly. But there was talent. Okay? So what we're looking for is second-tier players. Now, that's number one. What we also talked about in, I think, my last video, a couple of videos, the strength we have is our cap space. We have cap space. Now, I'm talking about Jerami Grant, right? Now, let me explain something to y'all. I listed 6 players that there's a high probability. Now, nothing's guaranteed, but there's a high probability that if the Knicks wanted these guys, they can get them. Because the thing about second-tier players is they generally do not get maximum contracts, and they're looking to maximize how much money they can get. All things being equal, they're looking to get paid. And the Knicks have the money to pay them. Now, because we are a developing team, here's the rub. We're going to have to overpay to attract these players to our team. So we're talking about Jerami Grant. And I heard some things about Jerami Grant. Like what I like to do is with these players, I will go and look at podcasts and news outlets from their region. So like with Denver, yesterday I listened to a podcast from the Denver Nuggets fan base podcast. I listened to podcasts from Chicago Bulls, from different fan bases. I want to hear what the fans have to say about their team, what they think about their players. And incidentally, most fans love their own players. There's only other city that hates its own players like the Knicks do. Or 2 other. Philadelphia and Chicago. They would dog their own players. But everybody else loves their own players. And are more level-headed about their team than the Knicks are. But anyway, we're in New York, so what are you going to do? So I'm listening to them, and this guy was very intelligent, very big Nuggets fan, very articulate, very analytical. And he was thinking that the Nuggets would have to come up with $70 million. 4 years, $70 million, because of the competition for Jerami Grant. Now, Jerami Grant, we saw him play in the bubble. He is not a first option, obviously. He's not a first option. We're talking about second-tier players here. So here's the number one question we need to ask ourselves. Do we want to overpay Jerami Grant? And if you do, how much are you willing to overpay him? Because you're going to have to overpay him. So I heard someone else from Denver, somebody that's like the equivalent of our Ian Begley, that's with the Denver Nuggets, like an announcer type guy, say would probably that they'd talk. The Nuggets already floated 4 years, $64 million at Jerami Grant. They cannot afford to give him a max contract, and he's not a max player. Okay, they've already got Jamal Murray and Jokic, who are superstar. Jokic to me is a superstar. He's two-way scorer, build your team around, get you to the championship type of guy. And Murray just established himself as that this past year. We just saw that happen. Okay. Grant is a third option. Solid defensive player, high IQ, doesn't make a lot of bonehead plays. Tremendous finisher at the rim. Tremendous finisher. He will dunk on you in a second. And moves without the ball extremely well. He shoots the ball okay, but not okay. He shoots the ball pretty well, but he's only taking about 2 threes a game. So it's low volume on the shooting. Okay. He's a career 9 points a game scorer, so he's not a big scorer. So if you're looking for a 4-man that's going to score, Jerami Grant's not your guy. He's a high IQ guy, glue guy, defender, finisher. Do you want to overpay for him? Because I think the fan podcast was correct. It's going to take about $70 million because Phoenix is figuring they're one player away. They got their superstar in Devin Booker. They got a budding one in Ayton. So they got their two big guys there. And they're looking for complementary pieces. And so Phoenix is looking to throw a bag at Jerami Grant. Atlanta is, and they're just like us, I think. So they're in developing stage. And so you got a couple, Detroit is like us also, but they're going to pay Christian Wood, who we're going to talk about also. So do you want to pay Jerami Grant 4 years, $70 million? Now let's talk about again where we are as Knicks. This is just me. And again, my boy Frank Ntilikina, Frank Nitty, Frankie Smokes, the French Prince, I got him at my point guard. I'm not thinking about no Kyra Lewis. I ain't worried about no LaMelo Ball. I got Frank Nitty there. I'm putting RJ at the 3. I know everybody talks about 2, but I'm putting him at the 3. He could play the 2, but to me, he's going to be a 3. I got Mitchell Robinson at the 5. I got Kevin Knox at the 4. What do you want to start Kevin Knox or bring him off the bench? I got Kevin Knox at the 4. So I brought all that up to say, what do we have at the 2 spot? Where we have the 2 spot. Now, I like Damian Dotson, but listen to this now. I like Damian Dotson, definitely. But I think I'm being fair and objective if I say to you, Buddy Hield, Joe Harris, Bogdan Bogdanovic are all better than Damian Dotson. I think I can say that. And I love Damian Dotson, right? But Bogdan Bogdanovic, Joe Harris, and Buddy Hield are all better than him at the 2 spot. Just better basketball players, better shooters. Okay? So, Buddy Hield's price is fixed. $24 million a year he's getting. He's $106 million over 4 years. This coming season is the first season of that. It's actually $25 million he's getting. Do you want to put Buddy Hield in that spot? Because let me tell you something. I'm going to say this again. Of the 6 players I'm talking about, Malik Beasley, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Jerami Grant, Joe Harris, Buddy Hield, Christian Wood, there's a very high 80% probability we can get any of these guys. We can get 2 of them. We definitely can get 2 of them. Why? Because we can overpay for them. Question is, who do you want to overpay for? Because we can get them. Who do you want to throw the money at? And how much you want to throw? Like people talking about Fred VanVleet, right? Fred VanVleet's the 3rd option. 2nd, 3rd option probably, right? And I don't think he's worth $22 million a year. I think some of y'all don't think he's worth $22 million a year. We're not going to go to the playoffs because we got Fred VanVleet. All right? So we'll be overpaying for a 3rd option. So what I'm asking is, who do you want to overpay for? Now, it's different levels of overpayment. Let's talk about Bogdan Bogdanovic. Oh, we talk about Jerami Grant. So Jerami Grant is probably worth, I would say, the 4 years, $64 million that Denver's talking about. So anything north of that, you're overpaying for him. Do you want to pay $70 million for him? Or $72 million? Do you want to give him $18 million a year for 4 years? I'm not comfortable with that. I like Jerami Grant, but I'm not comfortable with that. When you talk about, when the rubber hits the road, are you really you want to pay him that? I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that. Especially when we got Kevin. I like Kevin Knox. I think Kevin Knox is going to be good. So I'm uncomfortable with that. For a guy that's a 9-point career average scorer. Okay. Good defender, high IQ. But man, I'm not comfortable with that. Tell me what you think. Anyway, we'll get to that. But Bogdanovic was offered, and I got to thank somebody. Somebody brought this up yesterday. I didn't know until I looked it up. They caught me that one. Let me find out, because somebody brought this up yesterday, and I was like, you know what? I did not know that, but they told me, and I found out that it was definitely true that last year Denver Nuggets already offered Bogdanovich a 4-year, $51 million deal, which is the maximum they can offer him as an extension. He can get more as a restricted free agent, but the maximum they can offer him as an extension is 4 years, $51 million, and they offered him that. Okay? They offered him that last year. He didn't sign it. The deal is on the table right now. It's been on the table for a whole year. He has not signed it. When a player was looking at $50 million and not signing it, he's telling you, I think I can get more money. Now, they talk all this game, money's not important to me. That's garbage. What he's saying is, I'm going to test the open market because I think I can get more money. Now, $51 million is the starting price for Bogdanovich. And he's definitely, to me, he's worth more than that. Team player, 37% three-point shooter, average 13.5 a game, puts up 6 threes a game and hits 37% of them. I like him. 28 years old. He's in his prime. So, I'm thinking 4 years, $64 million for this guy. I'm giving him the Jerami Grant type money. 4 years, $64 million, which is probably that's $16 million a year for 4 years. I do that for Bogdanovich because he's a 2 and we need a 2, right? Joe Harris. He's another 2. And again, we can get any of these guys if we overpay. So Joe Harris is probably going to get $15 million a year on the open market. I can see him getting 4 years, $60 million. That's probably his value as a shooter, the high level. 43, what is he? 43% 3-point shooter. Solid defender. Yeah. I can see him getting 460. And the Nets really would want to keep that guy. I mean, even though they still got Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie as tremendous complementary pieces. But the likelihood of Kyrie Irving going the whole year without getting hurt is very small to me. You're going to have Kevin Durant and complementary pieces, which still makes them championship contenders. So, how much do you want to pay for Joe Harris? I'm thinking, for that, I'm not going to give him 4 years, but I'd give him 3 years, $54 million, $18 million a year. 3 years, $54 million. I don't know if he'd take that. If you wanted to overpay, you'd have to go that 4th year, and now you're talking $72 million. I'm not comfortable with that. What do you guys think? I'm not comfortable with that, with Joe Harris. Now, Buddy Hield's price is set. Like I said, he's $25 million a year. He's 28. You're going to get him for his 28 year, 29, 30, and 31. He's through age 31. So, you're not getting him. He's not at the end of the contract a decrepit old man. So, what are we talking about? So Buddy Hield, career, last year, 41% from 3. He pulls up 7 threes a game. That boy shoots it, man. And he hits 3 of them on average. 16 point a game career scorer. 87% free throw shooter. This guy is, like I said, he's an upgraded Tim Hardaway Jr. to me. Because he's also streaky. All right? He's also streaky. He's also 28. Now, the thing about Buddy Hield is he's not a free agent. See, everybody else here, Harris, Wood, Grant, Bogdanovich, Malik Beasley, these are free agents or restricted free agents. So we can offer them money and either they can accept our deal or your team has to try to match, right? And we'll talk about Beasley in a second. But Hield is not a free agent. We'd have to trade for him. But it just so happens we could trade for him. We could trade Julius Randle for him if they want. Now, this is the thing. We talked about this yesterday with the contract of Bogdanovich, which I believe the Kings are going to want to match. With the fight between, and that's what it is, a fight between Buddy Hield and the Kings management right now, which is weird. I mean, I looked at his last press conference for their last game of the season, and he was just so pissed. He wasn't even answering questions. He was being really hard. And he's not his agent or Buddy Hield are not answering calls from Luke Walton. They just don't even want to talk to him. That's an ugly situation right now. So whether or not the Kings need Julius Randle, which I think they could use him, I think they're open to talking about Buddy Hield. But I like Bogdanovich first if I can get him, because 464 is cheaper than 4106. And you're not talking about that big of a difference of a player. Okay? And we don't have to give up any assets. We could just throw that on the table. Here, Mr. Agent, for Bogdanovich, we're offering your client 4 years and $64 million guaranteed. And we're throwing a 15% trade kicker. So he's not going to get traded. He's going to be with us for 4 years. And let's see what happens. Right? So if the Kings match that, now we're definitely in a position to talk about Buddy Hield for Julius Randle, because they don't want to pay $44 million for two players that play the same position. They're not going to want to do that. Okay? And we ain't offering no draft picks. No, you got to give me a draft pick to take your boy off your hands. So Buddy Hield's a good possibility at that 2 spot. Then there's Malik Beasley. Beasley, really, he's been coming along. So he was drafted out of Florida State, a good basketball program, 19th overall in the first round by the Nuggets. And he came along slowly. His first year, he was 20 years old, averaged 4 points a game, basically played only 7-8 minutes a game. Second year, he played 9 minutes a game. Then his third year, they started playing him 23 minutes a game. He started 18 games. He scored double figures that year, 85% from the line. He shot 40% from three. Seems like he's one of these guys that's developing nicely, and the more time he gets, the better he gets, because then he got traded to Minnesota. They played him. He went from playing 22 minutes a game to playing 30 minutes a game, and he averaged 21 points a game, 43% from three, 75% from the line, and he's only 24. Okay. In fact, did he turn 24 yet? He's 23. He's going to turn 24 in November. So he's an up and coming guy. And you know what? Minnesota, I'm pretty sure, it's just me, they're going to draft Anthony Edwards. And Malik Beasley and Edwards play the same position. And now that Beasley's getting 30 minutes a game, he ain't going to be wanting to come off the bench. He wants to start. I'm thinking we can get away from offering Malik Beasley. Check this out. 3 years, $36 million. I'm thinking 3 years, 36, 3 years, 39, something around like what Spencer Dinwiddie got. And we can make it at 24. He fits the timeline. Now he got arrested for some marijuana stuff. Then it looks like they didn't press any official charge. They arrested him, put him in jail. Then his lawyer got him out, and there's no charges that's been filed. But that's the situation. It's something to do with marijuana. Marijuana is not as big a deal as it used to be to me. So whatever. He smoked some weed, or he had some on him, and they busted him out there in the country in Minnesota. Well, just what George Floyd's situation was. My son lives in Minnesota. It's definitely different. It's different. My son's a police officer in Minnesota. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm thinking we can get Malik cheap, because Anthony Edwards is going to be in that 2 spot. They got Jarrett Culver at the 3, right? They got Karl Anthony Towns, and of course they got D'Angelo Russell at the 1. I don't know who they're going to play at the 4 or what they're going to get in the 4. Right now is Omar Spellman, I think, is playing the 4 for them. Amari Spellman from Villanova. But Malik Beasley is going to be available. I don't know if they'd match that either, because they're already paying a max, 2 max contracts. They're paying a max to Karl Anthony Towns. They're paying a max to D'Angelo Russell. They're going to have Edwards on a rookie deal. And Beasley wants to start. So I'm thinking 339 might get him here. Okay, we don't have to even commit 4 years. He's 24. He can get him for 3 years. He'll only be 26, 27, and he'll be at the Garden then 3 years, and we can move from there. He works with the timeline. I'm liking Malik Beasley. And so I'm thinking we can get him cheap, and, he fits the timeline. He's not going to mess us up in terms of our cap, in terms of getting some big time free agent when we're ready. So yeah, who do you want to overpay for is the question. Do you want to overpay for 24-year-old Malik Beasley, 28-year-old Bogdanovich, 28-year-old Buddy Held? Well, Buddy Held is not, it's an overpay. They did give him too much, I think, at 106. So yes, Buddy Held, 29-year-old Joe Harris, which I don't mind that either. 24-year-old Christian Wood. That's another one. Now Christian Wood's a 4 who can play the 5. Now Mitchell Robinson's a 5. What do y'all think about Kevin Knox? Are you ready to sit Kevin Knox to pay Christian Wood the bag? He's 24 years old. I might. I don't know. I like Kevin though. So I want to give Kevin that room to blossom. That's all I'm saying. The only way I would not start Kevin, if I'm trying to develop, honestly, is if I drafted Obi Toppin. If I drafted Obi Toppin, he's my starting 4. Right now. Because you know what? Obi Toppin is 2 years older than Kevin right now. Coming out of college. He's 2 years older than Kevin already. So, Kevin could still be his understudy. But that's the only way. If I draft Obi Toppin, he's my starting 4. Otherwise, if I draft my boy Vassell, or if I draft Okoro, then Kevin starts at the 4. Okay. But what do y'all think? So that's the question of the day. We're going to overpay. Okay. We're going to. If you want to get somebody that's going to step in and be a shooter, stretcher, guy to stretch the 4 for us. Open the floor up. Who do you want to overpay for? Malik Beasley, Bogdanovich, Jerami Grant, Joe Harris, Buddy Held, Christian Wood. Who do you want to overpay for? As I'm looking at this hard, I'm not comfortable paying Jerami Grant $70 million. I'm just not, especially when I got Kevin Knox. I'm not paying Christian Wood $70 million either. He's, I'm thinking 448. I'm thinking, because he's young. He averaged 9 points a game for his career. Yeah, he came on last year, but it's just last year. Is he going to do that next year? I don't know. I like Christian Wood, but I want to see some more. Buddy Held's an established guy. So is Bogdanovich. Buddy Held, he's already locked in. We don't have to worry about renewing him or anything. 4 years, 106. You want him? I'm not bad with that. If we can't get Bogdanovich, I have no problem. We can go ahead and take it, Buddy Held, especially if it moves Julius Randle and gives Kevin that space right there. So, I have no problem with that. But Malik Beasley really looks like overall a guy. If I'm going to take a risk on a young guy and an up and comer, and I'm going to overpay, but I'm not getting crazy because I'm talking about, $39 million. Okay. Maybe you can even say 40, whatever, but that gets him here. They're not going to match if we say, we're going to pay him $14 million a year. They're not going to match that. They're not. See, that's where our leverage comes in. Because that's where we say, we're going to use our money and we're going to buy you here. This is the time when Dolan pulls out that checkbook and say, all right, Mr. Rose, how much am I writing? How much is the check for? Okay. That's it. If the check is out to Malik Beasley, it's $40 million. Or the check is out to Bogdanovich, it's $64 million. The check is for Joe Harris, it's $54 million. The check is Buddy Held, $106 million. And don't worry, you're losing Julius Randle's $19 million. Oh, okay. So what do y'all think? Who are you overpaying for? Shalom.